I got you this shit, boy.
You may have heard of 23andMe or Ancestry DNA. You know, those genetic tests where you spit in a tube and they tell you whether you're 4% South Asian or 95% Danish. But what happens to your spit after you mail it off?
Back in April, police arrested a man as a Golden State Killer, an infamous alleged serial killer who murdered 13 people back in the 1970s and 80s. After all this time, police eventually found the suspect when they uploaded DNA from a crime scene to a genealogy website database, where they found a number of matches, his third and fourth cousins.
Find out what the fuck you are.
Holy shit, you really bought that shit, eh?
I bought it for you, man.
The discovery of the structure of DNA was one of the most important scientific achievements in the last century, in human history, in fact. The now famous double helix is almost synonymous with Watson and Crick, two of the scientists who won the Nobel Prize for figuring it out. But there's another name you may know too, Rosalind Franklin. You may have heard that her data supported Watson and Crick's brilliant idea.
Our DNA actually can't tell us everything about who we are or where we're from. Each person's DNA consists of about 6 billion base pairs stored in 23 pairs of chromosomes, 46 total. That may seem like a dizzying amount of information, but 99% of our genome is shared among all humans. The remaining 1% contains everything distinct about an individual's ancestry. Commercial DNA tests utilize less than 1% of that 1%.
When you spit into a test tube, you end up giving away very sensitive information about yourself. We're guessing you didn't read the fine print, so we'll let an attorney summarize it.
When you sign up for one of these tests and you click on the agree to the terms of conditions, you are giving away substantially all of your property and privacy and legal rights to this DNA.
Your DNA data reveals information about your behavior, the diseases you're predisposed to, and the relatives you didn't even know you had. It also reveals information about your family members, even if they didn't take a test. And if you agree to participate in research, you're not just allowing companies to trace your ancestry. You're allowing them to give your data to third parties. And it's not always clear who these third parties are or how secure your data is in their hands. Once you hand over the rights to your data, it can be hard to control what happens to it. If your results suggest, for example, that you're susceptible to heart disease, that could wind up affecting your insurance coverage.
If you have taken one of these consumer DNA tests and it indicates that you have a likelihood for cancer or you're predisposed to certain types of medical conditions, the insurance company can ask you about your knowledge of your own health. And if you lie to the insurance company, they are allowed to decline your application or rescind your application if they find out about it in the future.
Laws like the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act can help prevent some cases of discrimination based on DNA. But those laws have plenty of loopholes and are presently under siege by Republican lawmakers. So far, we haven't seen any public examples of genetic test results being abused. But that doesn't mean it won't happen in the future. A lot of these risks are already spelled out if you read the fine print. But privacy advocates and lawmakers are working to get these companies to make the risks of DNA testing clearer to consumers. In the meantime, you might want to think twice before you spit into a test tube.
I don't even know what I am.
But yeah, it's for you to see.
For real?
Show your viewers what you are.
Bro.
Many indigenous peoples are barely represented, if at all. The test won't reveal heritage from people not represented in the database and shouldn't be used to prove race or ethnicity. And as more people get sequenced, your results might change. Looking further back, you may get a result like 2% Neanderthal. Though Neanderthals were a separate species from humans, that 2% doesn't come out of the 99% of our genome shared among all humans, but the 1% that varies. That's because about 40,000 years ago, certain human populations interbred with Neanderthals, meaning some people alive today have Neanderthal ancestors. Many Neanderthal ancestors, in fact. There are so many generations in 40,000 years that a single Neanderthal's genetic contribution would be untraceable. You can be both 100% French and 2% Neanderthal. Though both come from the 1% of DNA that makes us different, they're accounting for different things. Looking for traces of our ancestry in our DNA gets complicated very quickly. Both the way we inherit DNA and the information available for testing makes it difficult to say certain things with 100% certainty. When you think of the discovery of DNA, you probably think of two names, Watson and Crick, but there is a third, unsung scientist whose name you should know. Get the story of the woman behind the double helix with this video.
In 1951, she joined King's College to use X-ray techniques to study the structure of DNA, then one of the hottest topics in science. Franklin upgraded the X-ray lab and got to work, shining high-energy X-rays on tiny, wet crystals of DNA. But the academic culture at the time wasn't very friendly to women, and Franklin was isolated from her colleagues. She clashed with Maurice Wilkins, a lab mate who assumed Franklin had been hired as his assistant. But Franklin kept working, and in 1952, she obtained Photo 51, the most famous X-ray image of DNA. Just getting the image took 100 hours. The calculations necessary to analyze it would take a year. Meanwhile, the American biologist James Watson and the British physicist Francis Crick were also working on finding DNA's structure. Without Franklin's knowledge, Wilkins took Photo 51 and showed it to Watson and Crick.
Investigators go through people in the family tree one by one until they get to their suspect. Police do this with a public database called GEDmatch, where anyone can upload results from 23andMe or Ancestry DNA. Even if you never take a DNA test or commit a crime, this can affect you. Criminal cases are one thing, but here's another scenario. A man donated sperm anonymously 30 years ago. If his second cousin once removed takes a DNA test, his children will be able to find him. Relatives you've never met can take DNA tests that affect you, and the actions you take can affect relatives that you don't even know. If you think you've taken precautions to protect your privacy online, you could still find yourself out of luck. As DNA tests get more and more popular, databases like GEDmatch get bigger and bigger. Soon, it won't be hard to imagine a world where anyone can be found, for whatever reason, through a relative's DNA. The idea of your DNA being private no longer exists.
Instead of calculating the exact position of every atom, they did a quick analysis of Franklin's data and used that to build a few potential structures. Eventually, they arrived at the right one. DNA is made of two helicoidal strands, one opposite the other, with bases at the center like rungs of a ladder. Watson and Crick published their model in April 1953. Meanwhile, Franklin had finished her calculations, come to the same conclusion, and submitted her own manuscript. The journal published the manuscripts together, but put Franklin's last, making it look like her experiments just confirmed Watson and Crick's breakthrough, instead of inspiring it. But Franklin had already stopped working on DNA and died of cancer in 1958, never knowing that Watson and Crick had seen her photographs. Watson, Crick, and Wilkins won the Nobel Prize in 1962 for their work on DNA. It's often said that Franklin would have been recognized by a Nobel Prize if only they could be awarded posthumously. And in fact, it's possible she could have won twice. Her work on the structure of viruses led to a Nobel for a colleague in 1982. It's time to tell the story of a brave woman who fought sexism in science and whose work revolutionized medicine, biology, and agriculture. It's time to honor Rosalind Elsie Franklin, the unsung mother of the double helix.
I've always wanted one of these.
Yeah, man. Hopefully you don't find too many cousins on there, too. I don't know what your family been up to, but it's probably a lot.
A lot of incest. Fucking vampire.
You're a vampire, alright? You're something else, that.
Damn.
Yeah, you do have some questionable genealogy in you, so I want you to know.
Dude, I don't even know. What the heck, dude? Thank you so much, dude. Thank you.